The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping are set to hold a second day of talks today, before the U.S. leader wraps up his two-day state visit to Beijing. Although the two leaders met for more than 2 hours yesterday, the summit ended without major breakthroughs on key issues including trade and Taiwan. And the leaders of the world's two largest economies also agreed that the Strait of Hormuz should remain open. Trump also claimed that Xi offered to help broker peace with Iran, and that China would not provide military equipment to Tehran. Here in Korea, official candidate registration for the June 3rd local elections closes today. Contenders that formally joined the race will begin official campaigning on May 21st. We begin today in Beijing, where U.S. President Donald Trump concludes his state visit today. Despite the presence of American tech executives signaling a sharp focus on economic competition, the summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping has yielded no sweeping structural trade agreements. Our Kim Do-yeon starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping are entering the final hours of Trump's high-stakes state visit to Beijing. Discussions have so far yielded no practical agreements or breakthroughs on core structural issues. Instead, the focus has remained on personal diplomacy and the management of a competitive relationship. Cooperation was emphasized during a state banquet on Thursday, but through President Trump's invitation to the Chinese leader to visit Washington later this year and President Xi's reply.
Thank you again, President Xi, for this beautiful welcome, and tonight it is my honor to extend an invitation to you and Madam Peng to visit us at the White House this September 24th, and we look forward to it. And
the people of China and the United States are both great peoples. The goals of realizing the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can fully proceed in parallel without contradiction. They can mutually reinforce each other and benefit the world.
However, the rhetoric has not translated into policy shifts, with friction remaining over tech export controls and industrial subsidies. Furthermore, the two sides have yet to reach an agreement regarding Taiwan, leaving the most sensitive point of regional tension unresolved. Before the official conclusion of the state visit, the two leaders are scheduled to meet at the Zhongnan High compound for tea and a working lunch. This is expected to be followed by a highly publicized stroll, providing one last opportunity for dialogue before President Trump departs the Chinese capital. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And U.S. President Donald Trump also says he reached a key understanding with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Iran and the Strait of Hormuz during summit talks in Beijing. Trump also claimed that Xi offered to help negotiate an end to the conflict and pledged that China would not provide military equipment to Tehran. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping agreed during summit talks in Beijing that Iran must never obtain nuclear weapons and that the Strait of Hormuz should remain open in a development that could help revive stalled U.S.-Iran peace negotiations. According to the White House on Thursday, both leaders agreed on the importance of keeping the strategically vital shipping route open to protect global energy supplies. Washington also stated that Xi opposed any militarization of the strait and expressed interest in increasing U.S. crude oil purchases. The agreement reflects one of Trump's key demands for ending the conflict in the Middle East. Ahead of the summit, U.S. officials had urged China to use its influence over Tehran to help ease tensions in the Gulf region. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said China has a strong interest in resolving the crisis because it relies heavily on energy shipments passing through the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also said Beijing was expected to engage figures close to Iran's leadership quietly. China, however, struck a noticeably more cautious tone after the talks. Beijing confirmed Middle East issues were discussed, but did not specifically mention the White House claim that both sides agreed Iran should never possess nuclear weapons. Analysts say China appears reluctant to fully align with Washington's approach as it seeks to preserve leverage over Iran while protecting its own strategic interests in the region. Following the summit, Trump told Fox News that Xi had also offered to help negotiate an end to the war and support efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to global shipping. Trump says Xi expressed a willingness to play a constructive role in helping resolve the conflict and stabilize shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. president also claimed Xi assured him China would not provide military equipment to Iran, although questions remain over Beijing's broader economic and strategic ties with Tehran. 이승재, Arirang News.
And now for a closer look at the key takeaways from the high-stakes meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. We're joined today by Professor Mason Ritchie, Professor of International Politics at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Professor Ritchie, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
So the White House described this meeting as highly productive, while she also called U.S.-China relations the world's most important. How would you assess the overall outcome of the meeting yesterday?
Yeah, so low expectations, I think, were telegraphed in advance, and I think at least so far that's what we've seen. Both Xi and Trump are aiming at stability, floor on the relationship between the U.S. and China, resting on at least what appears to be superficially a sort of a relationship of respect of some variety or other between Xi and Trump personally. China's talking about this stability in U.S.-China relations even going on, I think they said in their readout for the next 3 years and even beyond. But certainly, something as grandiose as a structure for a G2 is going way too far. Both Trump and Xi think that their national strength advantages are significant and time is on their side. So there's no need for any type of, sort of sphere of influence division, that a sort of G2 type of situation would imply. Overall, I think the agreement for now is much more modest. They're aiming at stability. They're aiming at guardrails on the relationship. They're aiming at some predictability over the medium term. And of course, most of the underlying issues, notably, of course, Taiwan, remain points of contention that are unresolved.
Right, and Trump also says she offered to help broker peace with Iran, and they also agreed that the Strait of Hormuz must stay open. So how might this meeting affect the course of the conflict in Iran?
Yeah, so apparently the U.S. says in its version of the readout from yesterday that China said that the Strait of Hormuz should remain open and toll-free. The Chinese readout just mentions the Middle East in broad terms. However, I'm willing to believe the United States report on what it is that she said or China as a official policy has taken on the Strait of Hormuz, because that's consistent with what China's position already was. And of course, China has an interest, obviously a significant interest, in the Strait of Hormuz remaining open and toll-free. The U.S. also says that China said that it would agree to mediate between the U.S. and Iran and agree not to sell weapons to Iran. Again, this is not in the Chinese readout. If that's true, that might matter, especially perhaps the weapons delivery part of the equation. If China were indeed to not send weapons, or even more importantly, perhaps components for weapons that Iran could assemble itself. But we don't know that that's the case. And even if China said that, we don't know if they're going to actually hold to that. And so I think, the apparent agreement of China also to buy U.S. hydrocarbons and maybe slightly reduce some of its purchases in Iran in the future, might make a difference as well. But I think ultimately China, realizes that the United States has gotten itself into this problem, and it's in China's interest to force the U.S. to get itself out of this problem, at least for the short and medium term.
I see. And on Taiwan, in a closer meeting, Xi reportedly told Trump that differences over this issue, Taiwan, could bring the U.S. and China into conflict. And there was speculation that Beijing is expected to sort of press Trump on this issue. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, certainly China pressed the United States on this issue, as it always does. This was utterly, again, to be expected. China maintains its one China principle. The United States, however, has not changed at all its one China policy, which are not the same thing. And the United States, continues to advocate for the status quo, and China continues to treat the Taiwan issue as an internal issue that is, non-negotiable. And so, yes, both sides have essentially reiterated their position. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has also made that comment and basically said, yes, both sides brought up their traditional positions. Nobody budged, nobody moved. And now we've moved on to other topics, as usually happens in these U.S.-China meetings. I think the interesting thing to see might be whether or not the U.S. Ends up executing a $14 billion arms sale to Taiwan that's on the table. This would come shortly after a slightly more than $10 billion deal that went through earlier. So if the United States continues to deliver weapons to Taiwan, again, I don't really see at all how the United States position would have changed.
And there wasn't any sweeping trade breakthrough or major business agreements, right? How did the meeting turn out in terms of economic ties between the two countries?
Yeah, so I'm a little surprised, and most of this meeting so far hasn't really surprised me, but I was a little surprised that we didn't see something more directly about the rare earth from China side of the equation and the United States AI chip side of the equation, where the ramp down in tension in the trade relations between the U.S. and China is really focused to some degree on a trade détente from several months ago, where the United States basically said, okay, we're willing to open up exports of some high-end chips, notably from NVIDIA, their second best AI-related graphics processing units, to China, as long as China keeps the rare earth supply chain relatively open, going back in the other direction. And we didn't really see any mention of that, which I guess you could read as a sort of silent consent by both sides to continue with the way things are, but they didn't seem to use that as a build out for something bigger. Instead, what we've seen are some sort of modest announcements about agricultural purchases by China, some perhaps additional U.S. market access into China, some Chinese investment in the United States, and the setting up of a board of trade to deal with some of these tariffs and trade issues. Although Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, indicated that this is going to take a while to get going. Some perhaps aircraft purchases from China, from U.S. manufacturer Boeing, but it doesn't seem like there was a big structural move at all in the trade relationship.
Right. All right, Professor Ritchie, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Candidate registration for Korea's June 3rd local elections and parliamentary by-election closes today. The National Election Commission is accepting registrations from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. after applications opened on Thursday. Once registration ends, officials will assign candidate numbers later in the evening. Voters will choose mayors and governors in 16 metropolitan cities and provinces, as well as superintendents of education and heads of smaller local administrative districts. The official campaign period will begin on May 21st and continue through June 2nd, the day before the election. Early voting is scheduled for May 29th and 30th, while the main election day is June 3rd. Korea's benchmark KOSPI surpassed the 8,000 mark for the first time ever during intraday trading this morning. The index opened at 7,951.75, down 0.37% from the previous close. Those losses soon reversed course for a climb above the 8,000 level inside just 30 minutes of trading. The record came only 7 trading days after the benchmark first broke the 7,000 mark. The KOSPI closed on Thursday at a new all-time high, only 19 points off the 8,000 level. And South Korea's export prices surged in April, driven by sharp increases in semiconductor prices. According to the Bank of Korea on Friday, the export price index for April stood at 187.40, up 7.1% from the previous month to mark its 10th consecutive month of growth. This growth was largely led by the manufacturing sector, specifically computer, electronic, and optical equipment. The import price index fell 2.3% from the previous month as global oil prices eased from earlier spikes triggered by the Middle East conflict. However, prolonged geopolitical tensions in the region continue to pose upward risks for future raw material supplies. Despite these uncertainties, the country's net barter terms of trade index improved, jumping 14.3% on year. The Korean government says it believes that there is little possibility of a non-Iranian actor being behind last week's attack on the HMM Namu in the Strait of Hormuz. Foreign Minister Cho Hyun later added that attacks on Korea's civilian vessels can never be justified. Our Tae Yoon-kyung reports.
The government believes that Iran was behind the attack on a South Korean-operated vessel, the HMM Namu, in the Strait of Hormuz on May 4th. A senior official said Thursday that the government is gathering evidence related to the strike on the cargo vessel. He noted that the possibility of another actor besides Iran cannot be ruled out. However, common sense suggests this is unlikely since there were no pirates nearby. The official cautioned that Seoul has not yet formally confirmed the result yet, emphasizing that any conclusion regarding Iranian involvement would depend on the outcome of an ongoing probe assisted by the U.S. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun said Thursday that attacks on civilian vessels, including the HMM Namu, can never be justified or tolerated under any circumstances. Cho added that an additional government-level investigation into the attack on the HMM Namu will be conducted. He said necessary response measures will be taken accordingly, continuing that the government will make an effort to cooperate with related countries amid heightened geopolitical uncertainties. The Ministry of National Defense announced Thursday that it had sent a technical analysis team to Dubai to determine the cause and conduct a scientific analysis of the attack on the HMM Namu. The ministry said it will support the activities of the government joint response team by conducting a thorough on-site investigation, analyzing evidence to confirm the exact facts. The ministry added that the number of personnel dispatched and details of their activities would not be disclosed to ensure smooth investigative activities. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
As spring nights settle over Seoul, Gyeongbokgung Palace is once again opening its gates for its limited seasonal evening tours, offering visitors a rare glimpse into Korea's royal past beneath the tranquil night sky. Our culture correspondent Cho Young-eun takes us there.
As the sun sets over the city, Gyeongbokgung Palace begins to glow beneath the spring night sky. Passing through Gwanghwamun Gate, the sounds of the city soften into a peaceful landscape, where history, nature, and the beauty of Korea's royal architecture come together. Wearing colorful hanbok, visitors wander around the illuminated palace grounds, creating unforgettable memories beneath the gentle lights of the palace.
We were thinking about what to do for our 500th day anniversary. And then we heard that Gyeongbokgung Palace was opening at night, so we decided to come here together. There were so many hanbok rental shops nearby, and my girlfriend likes pink colors, so we chose matching outfits in this style.
My sister made the reservation, so I came here right after work. Since it's spring and the weather is so nice, seeing the lanterns and everything with my child is creating such a wonderful memory.
As the night falls, visitors can see landmarks like Keunjeongjeon Hall and the Gyeonghaeru Pavilion from a new perspective. Along the quiet palace path, the architecture and shimmering reflections across the water create a calm and breathtaking atmosphere. Further inside, visitors can also step into parts of the palace that are usually off limits, like Gyotaejeon Hall, once the queen's living quarters, offering a rare glimpse into royal life during the Joseon dynasty. This is Keunjeongjeon Hall, the grandest and most iconic part of Gyeongbokgung Palace and its main attraction. Seeing the palace lit by beautiful night illuminations in the heart of Seoul, it feels like taking a journey back in time through the 500-year history of Joseon dynasty. The Gyeongbokgung Palace night opening invites visitors to the royal palace after dark through June 14. Only 3,300 guests each evening can step into this nighttime journey, with an admission fee of 3,000 won, while children under 6, seniors age 65 and older, and visitors dressed in hanbok can enter free of charge.
It's a cool experience of taking pictures, just wandering around the palace because it's a really nice historical site of South Korea, and we're just having fun.
The nighttime opening will become even richer with performances of traditional court music beginning Friday, including a special performance commemorating the birth of King Sejong the Great. The Korea Heritage Service says it will continue developing programs to help the public better appreciate the historical value and the beauty of the nation's royal palaces. 조영은, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. CIA Director John Ratcliffe traveled to Havana on Thursday for a rare face-to-face meeting with Cuban Interior Ministry officials. This comes as fuel shortages caused in part by a U.S. blockade pushed the island into rolling blackouts, sparking widespread protests in the capital. Cuba said both sides expressed interest in law enforcement cooperation and that Cuban officials stressed the island poses no threat to U.S. national security. Ratcliffe's visit follows Trump's warning earlier this year that Cuba was next after U.S. forces captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in January. Russian attacks destroyed a 9-story apartment building in Kyiv on Thursday, killing 9 people, including a 12-year-old girl, in the 3rd consecutive day of massive strikes on Ukraine. More than 20 residents are still missing. Ukraine's Air Force called it the largest aerial assault since Russia's full-scale invasion began, with more than 1,560 drones fired at Ukrainian population centers since Wednesday. Some 180 sites across the country were damaged, including over 50 residential buildings. Ukrainian officials called on Trump and Xi Jinping meeting in Beijing to use their leverage to pressure Putin to stop the attacks. Closing arguments wrapped up on Thursday in Elon Musk's lawsuit against OpenAI. Musk's lawyers called OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, quote, a liar, and OpenAI's lawyers accused Musk of selective amnesia and said he simply wanted to control the company himself. Musk is seeking $150 billion in damages and wants Altman removed. He alleges OpenAI betrayed its nonprofit mission by accepting tens of billions from Microsoft. OpenAI argues that Musk knew about its plans years before filing suit and waited too long to take legal action. A verdict could come as early as next week. Egypt's Luxor Museum on Thursday displayed for the first time a plaster wall from King Tutankhamun's tomb. It is the only surviving artifact of its kind in the world that hasn't been seen by the public and is being displayed more than a century after the tomb's discovery in 1922. The wall bears the seals of Tutankhamun and the guards who protected his tomb. Two newly restored ancient tombs from Egypt's 18th dynasty were also unveiled, containing scenes of daily life, including agriculture, pottery, wine production, and funerary rituals.
Spring must be taking a bit of shortcut this year. Following yesterday's heat, it's going to be too hot for May in the western and inland regions of Korea. But meanwhile, the East Coast will be a lot breezier due to easterly winds today. And this unusual heat, hovering nearly 10 degrees Celsius higher than norms, will continue through the weekend under dazzling sunshine. So plan accordingly for any outdoor activities. Skies will stay mostly sunny nationwide today, and strong sunshine will bring UV levels to very high levels nationwide in the afternoon, so have your sun protection items ready. And this afternoon, Seoul gets up to sizzling 32 degrees Celsius, Gwangju at 30 degrees Celsius, but Busan and Jeju will be a lot more comfortable at 24 degrees. Looking ahead next week, heat relief is expected next Wednesday when rain moves in nationwide and helps cool temperatures back down to near seasonal norms.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
Let's go Simply K-pop! Hello everybody, I am Simply K-pop's MC Alan of Gravity.
네, 여러분 안녕하세요. 심플리 K-pop MC 그래비티 원진입니다. than this week's Simply K-pop. Don't miss out.
drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% since rate in April.
Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with its locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
Introducing Korean broadcast content that you won't be able to stop watching. For weary modern souls, Dr. Romantic, the quirky genius doctor of Puldam Hospital, prescribes heartwarming tales of humanity. A couple together for 7 years sees their rose-tinted glasses shatter. Can they keep their relationship alive? Discover the raw stories of youth, work, and love. Beyond what social media can show, experience the vibrant Korea through its hidden gems. Mama, the ultimate K-pop festival for global fans. Find your star in a feast of trendy music and electrifying performances. Now, the whole world enjoys it together.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you is Friday, May 15th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. And joining us today is Kyun.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And also Wonmi's with us.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're finally at the end of the work weekend here in Korea. Today is actually Teachers' Day. It's a meaningful occasion when students and parents express their gratitude to the teachers who have guided and inspired them. And for many Koreans, it brings back warm memories of pinning carnations on teachers and singing songs to thank them for their dedication and support. But what does Teachers' Day look like today in Korea, Kyun?
Teachers' Day looks a lot different and somewhat toned down compared to a few decades ago. Traditionally, it was quite an emotional day with visible celebrations. And like you just mentioned, students gave carnations to teachers, they sang songs, classrooms held small parties, alumni actually visited former teachers, and parents often sent gifts, cakes, or flowers to express their gratitude for educating their children. But modern Teachers' Day has become much more restrained and cautious, and one major reason is the anti-graft law, commonly called the Kim Young-nan Act. Now, under the law and in principle, parents are not allowed to provide any form of gift, including food, flowers, snacks, or condolence, or even congratulatory money to any teacher who can actually affect a student's grade or school life. So instead of gifts, many schools encourage just handwritten thank you letters or even verbal appreciation from students to teachers. And some schools even send notices asking parents not to send anything at all on Teachers' Day. Now, another reason is the rising controversy over student rights versus teachers' authority, and repeated cases of parents becoming excessively involved in schools by filing complaints to teachers for child abuse.
And to kind of highlight how serious the rule is being taken, I had a friend who was wondering what to get her professor during college, and she got her coffee, which is, it sounds harmless, but then the professor was really very careful about not breaking that law. So my friend had to drink both coffees that day.
Oh, really? So because I heard
really...
that the teacher receiving and the parent or the student giving that gift can both be penalized.
Right.
Yeah, for
so people do
making that kind of transaction.
Right. And people do really take this seriously. So how do you celebrate, I guess, Teachers' Day?
It's just for a cup of coffee?
Right.
Okay, now I know why. Now I know why things are toning down a little bit, because my experience is pretty similar with Ki-hoon. You know, back in 2015, 2016, when I was in middle school, which was about 10 years ago, I still remember me gathering up with my classmates and planning out what surprise events or what small gifts we would give to teachers. But nowadays, I'm not quite sure how the younger students, the new Gen Alpha, are actually doing it. But I can definitely feel that, as Kyun said, things are toning down a little bit, because when I was in middle school, again, I could see some random adults on Teachers' Day. I saw random adults walking around in the hallway, and I would go like, who are these people? And later I heard that they were previous students of our teachers. When I look at my peers nowadays, people my age, the Gen Zs, we don't see that many people visiting their old previous teachers nowadays. So things are definitely changing a little bit.
Right, I do see that too. So Teachers' Day used to feel like a much bigger event with former students returning to campus and schools just buzzing with appreciation. These days, the tradition seems a bit more low-key, which may reflect how the relationship between students and teachers is changing over time. And that's why we're going to talk more about this. But first, let's take a look at the screen. Teachers' Day is a time to honor educators who dedicate themselves to sharing their knowledge and helping others grow. But this meaningful occasion also highlights a growing concern in Korea. Many teachers say they feel their authority is weakening and that respect for the profession is declining. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at why teachers' authority continues to decline, what can be done to restore respect in the classroom, and the messages of gratitude people would like to share with the teachers who made a difference in their lives. Just as we saw in the video, Teachers' Day is both a celebration and a moment to reflect on the challenges facing educators today. To better understand the issue, it's important to look at where things stand now. So what is the current state of teachers' authority in Korea today?
To answer your question, we need to look at the past in order to better understand the current state of teachers' authority. So in the past, teachers in Korea held extremely high social status and authority to a point where there was even a saying, 군사부일체, which means that the king, one's teacher, and one's father are one, therefore deserves equal respect. And there was even a saying that one should not even step on a teacher's shadow, showing how much authority they had in society. And becoming a school teacher was once ranked as one of the most respected and preferred professions in the country. It's a big contrast to the current state. And in recent years, however, teachers' authority and rights have declined, leading to various social problems. In particular, public concern intensified in 2023 after a teacher in her early years of teaching took away her own life after reportedly suffering from repeated complaints and harassment from students' parents. This incident brought the issue of declining teacher rights and calls for stronger protection of teachers grew much louder, eventually leading to the revision of 5 major laws aimed at protecting teachers' rights.
So that contrast is quite striking, especially considering how highly teachers were once respected. And despite legal reforms, many educators say they still do not feel adequately protected. So how serious is the problem of teachers' rights violation today, Won-bi?
Right. So unfortunately, there are many recent incidents that show how serious this problem is. To start off, there was a clip that went viral, and it was a clip of students who were smoking and students who were obviously minors. This went viral not only because minors were smoking, but they were cursing and yelling to a teacher who was trying to stop them. And another worse example is students physically attacking teachers using weapons and planning the attack in advance. So more and more people are becoming more concerned about the safety of teachers and our school environments. So therefore, people are voicing out that the legal protection for teachers must be reinforced.
So those incidents show that the issue is far from resolved. And to find meaningful solutions, we first need to understand what is driving this continued decline. So why does Teachers Authority continue to see a decline in Korea, Kyun?
Various reasons have been cited to explain the decline in Teachers Authority. Within the education sector, the enactment of Child Abuse Punishment Act in 2014 put greater emphasis and focus on students' rights, while protection for Teachers Authority and educational activities within classrooms remained relatively insufficient. Now, at the same time, others argue that the weakening of Teachers Authority is partly due to how teachers mistreated students in the past, where corporal punishment and violations of students' rights was considered the norm. Now, this led to growing distrust toward teachers and the public education system. Now, another major issue has been excessive complaints, like I mentioned just before, from parents, particularly in the 2023 case. Some also point to South Korea's low birth rate, arguing that as children become increasingly precious to families, parents have become overprotective, being coined the term helicopter parents even, watching over them and controlling most of their behaviors, creating additional challenges for schools and teachers as it kind of restricts what they can do in classrooms, because knowing that any of these students' parents can always file a complaint and continue to harass them, they feel that, they feel very, I guess, they don't have much power in the classroom, no authority at all, and they end up doing nothing. And that could also cause more complaints saying, why aren't you doing anything for my students? You're not teaching them, they're not learning anything. So I think this is a very complex issue that we all need to consider and think of solutions moving forward.
Like I said, I think it's really important to think of solutions, because there was a time when, I mean, I didn't go to Korean school, but I know from a lot of my friends that physical punishment was a very common thing. So I think this is a thing that's very unique to Korea, but now I guess people are now focused on how the teachers experience now as well.
Now we see students hitting teachers.
Yes. Right.
Things have changed a lot.
I'm glad we're talking about this today. So this all points to a very complex mix of legal, cultural, and parental factors. And the changing role of teachers in society may also be part of the story. So how have broader social changes contributed to the decline in Teachers Authority, Wongbin?
Right, so there are a few big factors that play into this. The first factor is definitely individualism. You know, as Kyun explained earlier, in the past, teachers were considered to be in charge of everything about the students, not just their academic grade or performance, but also their morality and their general guidance in life as well. But nowadays, they're just expected to only interact with the students academically or in the classroom during classes. And parents are also a big reason. I just want to emphasize it as, again, long story short, overprotective parents are blocking teachers from doing anything to their children. And this leaves teacher with one choice, which is to not do anything.
So like my mom actually works at elementary school, and she said a lot of teachers feel like they actually are kind of walking on eggshells because parents are so involved. And it's kind of common also in Korea for teachers to give their numbers out to parents. So then they find parents calling them during the weekends. You know, when it's not work hours. So it is a very interesting thing. So to hear more actually in-depth perspective on this, we're actually going to talk to a teacher from a different country. And that conversation will take place right after break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Dominique, who's a teacher in the U.S. Hello, Dominique. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So Dom, before we start, can you tell us how long you've been teaching and what grade you teach, and also how teachers in the U.S. are seeing a decline in classroom authority?
Yes, definitely. So I am a special education teacher. My role has different names. Sometimes you might hear it as special education teacher support. You might hear it as resource room teacher. But this is my 6th year of teaching overall and my 2nd year in this particular role. Yes.
Wow, 6 hard years. Okay. Continue. You may continue.
So definitely. In response to like the decline in teacher authority in the US, first, I do want to say that while this job comes with many challenges, I do love teaching, and there are so many ideas that come to mind. The first thing that comes to mind is my personal experience as a student, in which it was absolutely necessary that I listened to and respected my teachers to get the most out of the lesson and learn how to conduct myself authentically and appropriately. I believe that everyone deserves to be treated with respect. But now, in classrooms, society even, they all reflect an attitude of respect is earned as opposed to given. So countless peers of mine have shared their experiences on feeling disrespected by students, families, even leadership. I've had families calling me at 8:30 p.m. to talk about homework and have been cursed at for calling multiple times in the morning to learn whether their child's just coming to school or not, sometimes without ever having met this person face to face. Now, this does reflect a small percentage of the families I've worked with, but every teacher in my circle has a story like this. I think of my past students who have talked back, screamed at me, thrown tantrums, pushed desks, kicked chairs, who I still care for deeply and I'm so proud of when I see them succeed. But such behaviors typically, they'll lead to a parent phone call or a meeting. And sometimes the responses from families match the situation and the behaviors taken care of. Sometimes it's not that easy, and it actually leads to learning that the student truly needs more support. So continuous partnership between the school and the families is necessary. Other times I'm, met with a lack of follow through on the family's behalf, and we find ourselves kind of having the same conversation again and again. And I learned really quickly in my career that there's a lot of similarities between teaching and working in customer service. And then we have to throw in having to be a counselor, a surrogate parent, a liaison, and then sometimes even a nurse. I've had to teach 9-year-olds how to tie their shoes as well. But there's a sort of dissonance that kind of goes around when it comes to teachers doing everything, but also not doing enough, which aligns with what you mentioned before about like teachers having to walk on eggshells. Sometimes like we have families who come in with like their preconceptions about teachers and educations, and then that trickles down to their kids. Then the kids take their frustrations out on their teachers. And then other times, some families just don't even know how to respond to how their kids are behaving, goodness. But then we do have instances where it's actually the administration, and it seems like administration's just trying to make families happy. And the cycle kind of just keeps going. But then there are times where like we have families of all backgrounds and sizes, and they're just not home with their kids to guide them because they're out there working, they're trying to survive and make sure their kids have food, and they just don't have time to be at home because the cost of living has gone up so much. And just in general, there's so many factors that play into teachers' authority in the classroom overall. It's really very nuanced.
Thanks for sharing that. Have there been any cases that sparked debate about teachers' authority in the US or even in the state that you're living in?
Well, when I think of cases, the first things that come to mind, honestly, are just the videos that we see on social media as opposed to, like a more serious case. They exist, but the first thing that comes to mind are the social media posts where we see these kids getting in their teachers' faces and yelling at them or launching a book across the room after their phone gets taken. And the debate often centers around who was truly out of line. Yes, there are definitely teachers who don't respond appropriately to the given situation, but then there are also students who are doing the same thing. So it's a lot of back and forth, and it's hard sometimes to get a clear answer, but everyone has their opinions.
Right, so based on the examples that you've given us, I guess the states and Korea are going through the same problem. So now, what systems do you think can be put in place to better protect the teachers like you?
So first, I think of a need for an administration and curriculum that comprehensively support teacher development and student behavior and emotional well-being. I've seen firsthand many times how consistent support and socio-emotional education for kids really works to develop their overall, their holistic development. And then if teachers are not trained in properly responding to students' behaviors and their emotional needs, how are they going to effectively do their job and help these children learn? Because at the end of the day, we're still in the classroom and the learning still needs to happen. Then going on to administration, if teachers don't believe that their administration will train and support them, then how will they feel comfortable taking on this challenging role? Despite, in the US at least, there have been changes, state-based, that have been made to have the teacher pathway become easier. But there is still a teacher shortage despite that. And I've seen many first-year teachers quit within the first 2 months of school. Then I think of the need to support families more as the cost of living rises, keeping them at work and limiting the time that they spend raising their children. Like daycare, after school, tutoring programs, summer camps, they exist, but they're not always accessible everywhere. And then, like I've mentioned a few times now, just the greater matter of lowering the cost of living so that families can be with their children, but that does launch an even longer conversation.
I'm just my mind is reeling because I didn't know how similar the situation would be in the US. We're also dealing with high living costs, and also working moms find it so difficult to balance both taking care of their kids and also, sending their kids to school. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us today, Dominique.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we just spoke with a teacher in the U.S. about whether American educators are also experiencing decline in their classroom authority, the kinds of incidents that fuel debate over teachers' rights, and what systems can be put in place to better protect these teachers. With those perspectives in mind, it's time to focus again what can be done here in Korea. So what solutions can help prevent the decline of teachers' authority, Kyun?
According to reports and accounts from the education community, repeated false or malicious child abuse allegations filed with the intention of harassing teachers have become a major source of stress for educators. And many argue that stronger penalties should be imposed on parents for these groundless accusations.
What are your thoughts on this?
Right. To build on top of what Kyun said, another method that we can do is to protect the teachers from these false legal attacks as well. What we can do is make the Ministry of Education be responsible for these allegations. So this way, teachers will feel that they're protected and they will be more confident and they will feel safer to interact with students when they think it's necessary.
So these suggestions highlight the need for stronger institutional support and clearer accountability. And ultimately, teachers are better able to guide students when they know the system is standing behind them. So we also wanted to hear directly from our viewers. So we ran a poll on the Arirang News YouTube channel asking what's most needed to protect teachers' authorities, and here's what the results showed. So the largest share of respondents, 63%, said students who seriously disrupt learning should be removed from the classroom. Another 20% called for stronger penalties for false child abuse allegations, while 10% supported a unified complaint system to prevent direct parent-teacher conflicts. And just 7% said principals and superintendents should be given greater authority. So the results suggest that many teachers believe the most urgent priority is restoring a stable learning environment in the classroom itself and beyond policy and systems. However, we want to close with on a more positive note because Teachers' Day is also a chance to express our gratitude. So what would you like to say to a parent who has made a difference in your life, Kyun?
There are many teachers that actually, helped me to become a better student and a better person, but I just like to thank all of them for putting up with me and correcting me of all the things that I did wrong. I'm actually doing quite well right now, so I think that educational background really helped me to become a better person and excel in life. But I know how difficult it is to become a teacher because I have taught students myself. especially when you have to take care of so many students all at once. It's not an easy job. And look, not all teachers are great, but at the same time, not all students are academically thriving at the same time. But one thing for sure is that we need to have a common level of respect for each other, for teachers, students, and of course the parents as well. So if the three parties can actually communicate very well and work together, I'm sure all of these problems can be alleviated and become a more, I guess, peaceful, harmonized, fun learning atmosphere, because we've all gone through that, right? Even parents, they used to be students themselves as well. And I'm sure not all of them were great students. They need to know that. And even teachers as well. They need to understand how much suffering they go through every day on a daily basis, but they love their job. That's where they started. But then hearing from Dominic, a lot of teachers dropping out after like 1 or 2 months, few months beginning, it really shows that teachers' authority has really died down, and whereas children rights, student rights have gone up. So I think we need to find a new balance moving forward.
So what about you?
I think Yoon just did a very good summary of what we talked about today. I just want to say thank you to the teachers. And now that I am a teacher, I understand how much of a difficult student I was. So to all my teachers, I'm sorry, and I thank you.
So the teachers shape not only what we know, but also who we become. As today's discussion shows, protecting teachers is essential to protecting the future of education itself. And on this Teachers' Day, perhaps is the perfect time to thank the educators who helped guide us along the way. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation with Newsha, and we'll be back on Monday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. Big thanks to Ki-hoon.
It's always a pleasure.
And also Wonbin.
Thank you for having me.
And to our viewers, thanks for watching. Hopefully you'll continue to meet great teachers in life, because many of us are still waiting to feel like real adults. We are
News Generation.